Good Morning Mayberry is brought to you by Amass Studio, LLC.
This episode was recorded on October 2nd, 2022 with Jaden Young.
Good morning, Mayberry.
Yeah, so I had just started week 2, but then you guys were talking about, I looked at the spoiler anyway, and you said something about synthetic skin, and I'm like, I haven't gotten to that part yet.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my gosh.
Oh, man. Well, hey, Mayberry. This is an episode with Jaden Young, who I met in the Eat Predators book club. Presented raw and unedited. Recorded pretty soon after we met. I didn't even really know his name yet. I haven't been involved with Eat Predators since November, when Alexa Nicholas suddenly shut me out of the Discord and declined to respond to my calls, text, or email. I was heartbroken and disoriented at the time, but quickly gained focus back on my own important projects, like producing this blessing of an episode. I've been informed that Eat Predators has reported treachery afoot at their threshold. I hope Alexa is okay, and I wish her peace, safety, and healing while becoming accountable for her actions. It seems there are several public and private calls for her to address past offenses. In response to the many messages I've received in concern for my safety and well-being as these claims are being connected to me by random third parties, I'm okay, and I'm confident that I won't be harmed by any of the fallout from Alexa's false allegations. The book club, though. The book club was a trip. I think there might have been an REL chapter missing from the book, or meta-narrative that the book club manifested with our lives. I was informed that Jaden recently announced some heavy things on his public Instagram account, at Y2REMAYNE, about not being fairly treated. I heard someone took his voice away. Like JoJo? Like an Ursula kind of situation? Anyway, I went to look at his post, but I couldn't figure out what he or anyone trying to verify his claim was saying. So I embedded his post and screenshots of it in the episode description on goodmorningmayberry.com in case the posts disappear or change. I'm hoping y'all can help me figure out who or what he's talking about. It sounds very alarmist. Alarming. What do I mean? I'm confused about it all. But luckily, Jaden Young, at Y2REMAYNE on Instagram, has a voice here. For an hour and 36 minutes, Jaden Young has a voice here. So grab a snack and some water and don't worry about listening all in one sitting. Accounting for the added time of this intro, there's a good time to take an intermission right around 35 minutes, an hour and 9 minutes, and an hour and 35 minutes, give or take. Those are just after specifically important things that Jaden Young, says in his own voice that he alleges somebody took since the recording of this episode that he generously allowed me to host him on to present his brilliant and persuasive mind. And he allowed me to produce and pay to broadcast for him to be heard by my audience. I thought it was best to not edit it out of respect for Jaden's claims to want to control the narrative for himself. I've never done this before, but in honor of Jaden's gracious presentation and recent post calling for attention on his voice and experience, I made the decision to give him this courtesy since I was prepping this episode to release when I was told about his harrowing ordeal. Anyway, on to the episode where we talk a long time about a lot of things revolving around narrative manipulation, media, morals, and the dangers of irresponsibly used influence. Jaden Young sure has a lot to say in his own voice about things like that. I'm excited about how knowledgeable and collected this episode is. It's a little long, but we get into some good content about Jaden's entertainment business structure research around Britney brands, what really went on in the Eat Predators Discord and book club, BJ, who recently blocked me for criticizing her tabloidist clout-chasing circle jerk buddy boy Sloan. For the record, I renounce and redact any support or endorsement of BJ and Sloan in any of their work. I also renounce and redact any praise or endorsement of Eat Predators and Alexa Nicholas as a leader or advocate in any way, as well as her agents and operatives. We talk about TMZ and Bam Margera. We talk about Wendy Williams and Wells Fargo lawsuits, and how Britney's fans can be used to make her life hell, and the humans behind markets that brands and media seem to forget exist. We talk about how the same manipulation tactics exist in Hollywood as in religious cults, and I even mentioned my mom. I know that in 3 years of episodes I never mentioned my family on this show, but I felt very comfortable and trusting in the vibe that I had with Jaden, and the topic drew it out of me, so I leaned in. Anyway, Jaden talks about how important it is to have morals and caution when reporting on events and people. He deconstructs the impact and consequences of intentionally spreading false narratives to sway public thought. Like Jaden is about to tell us, when influential people post things, it spreads like a virus, like a wildfire. And how also, in Jaden's own brilliant and amazing words, often with complex cases involving opportunities, there's a lot more to the story than it seems. And how when people are more interested in harvesting data than hosting space, the communities that gather under their invitations may suddenly suffer greatly. One warning, I talk about Josie and the Pussycats and give a teeny tiny spoiler, but it's so small that it's basically a preview, and you can skip like 45 seconds when I start up about it. If you want to challenge anything either me or Jaden says, give us a call at 415-3434-420 or email connect@goodmorningmayberry.com. Anyway, here's Jaden in his own voice when it was his to use as his own. His words are his own and do not inform the opinions of me, Good Morning Mayberry, Amass Studio, or any of our other associates. I also fully rebuke this version of myself for being so trusting, loving, excited, vulnerable, optimistic, and cringe. LOL. Anyway, here's me and Jaden talking in the first raw and unedited audio episode of Good Morning Mayberry.
You can just call me Jaden.
Cool. That's what's up. So yeah, we met in Alexa Nicholas's book club, which is this is my favorite group of people ever that I've hung out with.
I know, right? It's just like so many people there that can have such different stories, but in a lot of ways just really be able to relate to you in the aspect of certain things that you've had to deal with.
Yeah, everybody's really got a completely different, like, villain origin story, but now we're here as, like, some kind of bizarre super troupe that's, like, I don't even know. I've just, every time I look into the Discord, I'm always just like, well, that's, like, something that I wanted to know about, or, like, how nice to see somebody, like, spilling their guts and then another person stepping in and saying, like, exactly what I would want to hear if it was me spilling my guts, kind of. I don't know.
Right.
Lovely.
And then it's like hearing other people say like, oh, I don't want to take up too much time. It's like, no, I get it, because the exact reason I like shorten all of my stories is because I don't want to take up all of the talking time. But really, it's just like, I think when you go through certain things and deal with other certain things as an emotional reaction to that, I guess, just as an umbrella term, a lot of people don't really understand. So when people do, it's just like, oh, you just have all this other stuff you want to talk about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm finding that like sometimes I'll want to say something and then I'll observe the conversation happening and I'll get like healing or feedback around the thing that I wanted to say without even saying it, based on observing how a healthy conversation around trauma can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh boy. And actually, I think that I think we were talking about Bam Margera specifically on, maybe I'm mistaken, but.
Oh yeah, so that one is really interesting because it's one of those situations where it's going on in real time.
Yeah.
The guardianship, conservatorship, abuse pattern. And I don't know if you've heard of a YouTuber / like lawyer, former lawyer. Her name is That Surprise Witness.
I know. I am obsessed with BJ. Yes.
Yes. So I've been getting a lot of the information from her, and she points out a lot of the stuff that the media does not. And the other day, actually, is when she made this post where TMZ, and I don't know if they got away with it just because they didn't state explicitly that he was drinking or what it was, but it was like this photo of him out partying, as they described it, and about how his rehab didn't work, apparently, and stuff like that. Just things that are disrespectful to say to anybody who's going through that, but knowing the details of his situation. As he's spoken out about it, it's just a little extra kind of demoralizing to the person, because it's just, I get that it's their job, as they say, but they have a lot of influence on the public narrative. So people who are enablers to the abuse or contributing to him being treated unfairly and held against his will, and the whole deal with that, are really using this media as just kind of to back them up. And you'll even see when you follow cases like the conservatorship, guardianship things, a lot of times those headlines get brought up in court. And you can write a story without necessarily having to diminish someone's character or write something that you probably already know is not the truth.
Sure.
And it's
Well, and
like
I would
they're
argue
always
and just in this particular case, it seems like it was a completely inflated concept entirely, and that he was just out at a bar with people, and he wasn't drinking. He was hanging out with some folks, and I think there was like an event or something he was celebrating. This is not to derail from the direction you were going to carry us in. Let's keep going that way. But
right.
I'm
Yeah.
finding specifically with Bam's case that there's just a massive amount of assumption and like infantilization that does not make any sense. That he's just supposed to stay
Exactly.
all the way. If he can't be near
Yeah.
somebody else who looks like they might be drinking without a story getting spun. He can't stumble. What was he wearing slides? He was talking about I slipped in my slides and they said I was
Yeah.
stumbling drunk, kind of stuff.
Yeah, he said he's had quite a few videos actually that he put out on his Cameo account, and then he
Mhm.
did one directly to that surprise witness, which she said she didn't purchase or whatever they do. So I guess he either just addressed it to her directly, or someone bought it on her behalf, or I don't really know what that situation was about. But that's where he did show that he was on an ankle monitor. And then I'm glad that you brought up that subject of the way that they portray him, because that's a pattern with a lot of these cases, specifically with the conservatorships and the guardianships. And when it's someone like Wendy Williams, it's very similar in a much different way. So it's like, there are these videos, these photos going around of her where she just kind of looks not her best, and those are the photos that are being used to justify rumors about her having dementia.
She has a specific medical condition that
exactly
causes things that people are. So they're calling it dementia, but the specifics of her disorder it's like something like wide eyes, like she'll open her eyes wider and kind of have these moments where she seems fugue, but she's not. She's dealing with something sensorial or body related, and it's not necessarily a neurological or psychological event. But the images, the framing of it immediately can be used for things like dementia or drug use, or the dementia thing is so bizarre. It seems like they've been using it behind the scenes for a little while to discount people, which I guess is sort of the public narrative that was presented. They just never used that word all along. Like with Brittany, when she was shaving her head, nobody said dementia back in 20 whatever, but I guess it stands to reason that that's the word of choice that they're using in court.
Yeah, and I don't really know exactly how that got tied in. I believe what the original filing said was Wells Fargo and Lori Schiller saying that she had suffered from dementia or undue influence. And what Wendy Williams had actually... Yeah, so it's kind of a vague thing.
Yeah. I don't even like Wendy Williams. I explicitly dislike her as an entity and an icon, and I still want her to have her liberty and her money, but I don't like anything I'm seeing about what's going on with the headlines or what people are claiming or any interviews. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and one of the things that I pointed out, I'm going to eventually either make a YouTube video about it or something, but she did... those photos where I don't really know, she has on shorts, but there's a few of those as well. But there's a video where she's actually fine. So you can tell that the photos are a little manipulated to look a lot worse than they are. She doesn't really look as bad as she does on the photo. And she's holding down a conversation. So she's actually talking with one of the paparazzi like during the shooting of this video, and she's really showing that like she's doing a lot better than you saw in the TMZ interview when she was really kind of going through her own health issues at that time. And she was actually she was speaking clearly. She could understand what the person was saying. And it was obvious that this isn't a person with dementia. Yeah. And I pointed that out because that's a pattern. And I think one of the big things about Wendy Williams' case is Britney Spears. The internet wasn't what it is today, so people couldn't really just like think of just going online and just buying the court documents and reading them as easily as you do today. But it's just like with Wendy Williams' case, immediately someone was buying the court documents. Everyone was reporting what the court documents said. And then the court documents get sealed. But at this point, there's already so much information to know about what's going on. And I think that the media right now has a strong hold on that narrative being in control and covering up any conversations about what she's going through being not right, especially when 2 times she's actually spoke out on her own account about, being unfairly treated.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really see them. And then not to jump into the social media thing too quick, but just for when we do get into that, the social media with Wendy Williams, if you go and look up her name on TikTok, it's just really all of these videos. One of which where it was like multiple people talking to her at one time and she didn't answer the question that the person recording was saying, and that was kind of used to make her look like she was crazy. And then there was one of her she was literally just in the grocery store with a shopping cart, and they're like, Wendy Williams is in the grocery store going crazy. And it was really like nothing. It was just like somebody with a shopping cart who was buying groceries. And it does almost raise the question that maybe this is not necessarily just an accident. Like, it sounds crazy to suggest that, but if they're going to go as far as to have people go to the media to intentionally spread the false narrative, it makes me concerned that since social media is such a powerful way to freely express your voice, that there could be certain things that impact conversations about things that they don't want conversations about, in a sense.
Absolutely. Do you have a theory about why Wendy Williams was targeted? Because Britney Spears, I understand. Bam Margera, I understand. I don't like either of them, but I fully get exactly who's surrounding them and why their lives are going the direction they're going. Wendy Williams doesn't make any sense to me.
What I think, I've heard her side of the story, so I've heard her say she doesn't really say exactly what made her suspicious of Lori Schiller, but the story is that she was suspicious of things that she was doing with her money, and she was getting ready to fire her and move to another bank. So I don't know if it was just Wells Fargo trying to meet a sales quota, which they are known for doing. So there was actually a lawsuit with Wells Fargo where they were being sued for, I don't remember exactly what it was, opening fake accounts. That's what the lawsuit said. So the lawsuit said that Wells Fargo was opening fake accounts to meet a sales quota. My first assumption would be that, but you often see that with these types of cases that there's a lot more to the story. But considering that she was just getting ready to leave Wells Fargo and find another bank, I would really think that Lori Schiller was doing something she shouldn't have been doing with the money. Like, I can't really think about what that would possibly be, but obviously it was something to make Wendy suspicious. So it had to be something a little unusual, to say the least.
Maybe sometimes this money stuff is very like archaic. Like, it's like, the person that's supposed to be the advisor or whatever, they just end up like running a really old game that you think is kind of like a retired trick that people in that industry don't do anymore. And sometimes it's like way simpler than not when you get to the actual root.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I really just think the media, and it's like, I don't like to, I know we should say that instead of just canceling them all, that the media should change and change the way that they report. But when we talk about stuff like, for example, TMZ, it's just like, you look at what they said about Bam Margera, and a lot of the times they're more interested in getting more money from like a trashy headline with a really bad photo of somebody. And they probably don't really care about their impact on not only is this affecting the person who they're targeting and their court cases, especially if it's with an abuser. Like, we've seen all kinds of smear campaigns when it comes to any type of case of abuse. You know, there's always the Shade Room or TMZ to hop on and try and see some other side of the story to try and make the other person look bad. A lot of times they're paid. But yeah, it's
Well, I
really
actually just
crazy.
scrolled. I just scrolled Wendy Williams on TikTok for a second, and I'm wondering immediately who these people are that are making their posts. How many of them were paid, and how many of them are just influenced by somebody who got paid, and they just want to hop on a bandwagon and feel some type of way about something.
And it would be such an easy thing for them to cover up, because when influential accounts and people say things, it spreads like a virus. Because if someone's got even just 100,000 followers, or a million followers at that, or is a celebrity with like a cult following, it's just when someone posts something, it spreads like wildfire. So if it's someone who's just a social media influencer that was secretly or not secretly, or however they actually go about doing stuff like that, kind of geared to report that, it's really kind of hard to get to the bottom of it, especially because these people don't like to give up their sources.
Duly so. I honestly,
Yeah.
the first thing I want to do with their sources is discredit them and not pay attention to them. What a weird world we're living in. Allegiance
Yeah.
and interest are so weird.
And I don't really think that someone's like, if someone said it's just a rumor. So it's like, if someone goes on social media and says, "Oh, a source tells us that this and this happened," it's just like, why is that always just assumed to be true by the masses? It's just so weird. And I think that's just the whole tabloid gossip culture that has been built into American society and has become such a moneymaker in a way that it's a very toxic thing for society.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't want to admit that they kind of have main character syndrome, and a lot of us, like, the first kind of like elevated sort of content that we get in Western, like, global North culture is like mystery stories. And
Right.
so the idea that like there's a secret you might find out later, and this is good enough for now, or like, people, I'm sure it's real basic and has something to do with like dopamine and oxytocin combinations or something like that. Like,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, like, people are just looking for relief. So, but then also excitement. So there's like a question gets open, and then they just want the quickest conclusion that they can come to. And a lot of people are addicted to like opening questions up that they can quickly close, I think. There's certainly some weird behavioral things that don't have a firm kind of universal language to discuss. Probably primarily because it's been created by a lot of these new entities that are kind of our new babysitters, the Facebooks and the, whatever, all these places where we gather to socialize, that
Yeah.
they're more into harvesting data than hosting space.
Exactly. And a lot of times it's so automated that it can be very easy to manipulate an algorithm. Like musicians do it all the time. It's almost the norm. Like when you study musicians and how promotion works and streaming, a lot of the cheap tricks that they use in the media, you're going to use in your own advertising, just because that's, in a way, like, which makes it so weird at times to enter the music industry in a certain way, but you have to really present yourself and put yourself on a pedestal to build a brand. Like, you have to pay these people to write about you, to promote your album, then you got to pay these people to put it on the playlist, and it can feel inauthentic. And it's like, a lot of these things, it might not necessarily even be a good thing, because it's being used against people.
Right. PR services and how readily available they are, and what I mean, like, I just don't think most people know. I started this media production company in 2020. I started really doing the research around it, and one of the first giant pills that I had to swallow was kind of recognizing how the PR industry would either work for me or against me, depending on what choices I make. And once I kind of recognized what it was, I went and contacted companies that were way out of my budget, mainly because I just wanted to know what it would take to get on Good Morning America, for example. Like, how much money would it actually take to get in the Wall Street Journal? And I presented myself very well to these people. I don't think any of them were on to me that I didn't have a budget to be working with them. And I sounded very excited about the services they were providing. So essentially the answers that I got is, like, for somebody like who's got a multi-million-dollar bank account of disposable money that is not going to sustain their very livelihood, it's an easy purchase to get the narrative manipulated, and learning that and trying to explain to people, because the billionaire space race rhetoric was kind of getting spicy right when I was discovering this. And so every single article that came out about Bezos or Musk or like anything to do with any of that, I was like, wait a second, these are clearly not news stories. These are clearly the way that the people behind these little projects want the project to be discussed in the mainstream narrative. How could I possibly explain to enough people fast enough for this to not completely distract everybody and get them thinking about, it's like Apollo 13, when it's definitely not that. It could be anything from developing weapons to just keeping people distracted. But yeah, the push-pull that they're able to do, the way that they can kind of just attract attention or get everybody looking over here, it's disconcerting. It's alarming, unsettling.
Yeah. It's very toxic, because when you see the way that abuse is handled in the media, they don't really think about the fact that this is going to reflect in the behaviors of people who can see these patterns even through the media and can relate that to what they see in the media, in a sense. Because it's like, thinking back to my childhood, like my mother, she was just very about image, and when it came to just kind of the emotionally manipulative tactics and certain things that I had to experience, I realized over time a lot of it she would copy from those things, and she would often project onto the people that she saw on TV. And even if that doesn't necessarily affect others in the same way, it can still influence society to react a certain way when someone behaves in a particular type of way or tells a certain story that's similar to what they saw.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how we learn how to be. Yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot of us like to have a bigger ego and kind of assert that we are more in control of our personalities or our choices, but um, a lot of who we are and what we find to be acceptable is about the information that's pumped into us. And parasocial relationships are a much more powerful thing than a lot of people want to give credit to. Most of the time, in my experience, parasocial relationships are stronger than interpersonal relationships, especially ones that are in actual person.
Yeah, and it's just the way I feel like something or someone needs to kind of step in and have make it to where it's not so easy. So it's like I get when you are an entertainer of any kind, whether you're famous or not, doing press is very important uh, for anyone who's in, YouTubing, streaming, music, like all of that stuff. That's a very important thing. But it's just too easy for really just anybody to infiltrate the media like that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like anybody can claim to know someone. And even if they do know that person, you don't really know that you're getting the truth from that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's become amplified gossip at that point because it's just like, oh yeah, I can really, you can, and I really am shocked to see that people at such a high success use these same tactics, but you can buy press articles on cheap blogs for pennies. And really,
Sure.
you can, like, you can go to all these different websites and you can get like 10 gossip blogs to write about you. And you'll go through these blogs and you'll start to realize these same people in the industry are also buying these penny articles, as I would call them, just
Mm.
because it's like you'll pay $5 to some sketchy website and then you're all over Google. It's like it's so common in music mainly, but just in business, if that makes sense, because people in business do it a lot, but it's just like it shouldn't be so easy to have influence on, say, someone tells their story about abuse, and then it's just like, oh, I can throw money at this, and now everyone thinks that they're a liar.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a much deeper problem than a lot of people want to give it credit because uh, I've been I've been avoiding mentioning my mom. She's kind of a case study um, in influence to me, both
Mm-hmm.
being influenced and being an influencer. We haven't spoken in a while, she and I, but one of the notable things that I started to kind of really try to figure out about her was how she was so easily wrapped up in specifically the empires of like Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, Joel Osteen, and various people like that, which I think they're all kind of, I think that like while those men could be, they're all very different or whatever, I feel like they're all actually peddling
Right.
the same exact product, um, which is attention, basically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, kind of watching her become interested in specifically those brands, and then want to talk to me about those brands. Uh, it really kind of contrasted how differently our brains work with data, with marketing, with just kind of information and how it's packaged.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and this is kind of old stuff. Have you ever seen Josie and the Pussycats?
Not in a lot of years, but yes.
I've been thinking a lot about. There's a character in it that there's a scene where, do you remember Du Jour, the like boy band that crashes in the plane at the beginning?
I honestly don't, but it's
Fantastic.
been such a
No,
long time.
I haven't seen it in a long time either, but it's such a burned in
Mhm.
movie for me that I used to watch when I wasn't well a lot.
Uh,
So yeah, no,
yeah.
the setup is there's a boy band at the beginning. and they start to realize that there's a track underneath their music that's telling people directly to like go buy this thing or go buy that thing. It's Mr. Movie Phone's voice is like commanding people to make other purchases and marketing all these other products underneath their songs. So when they figure it out, they go to their manager, played by Alan Cummings, and he immediately goes to, they're in a plane when they find this out, and he goes to the cockpit, closes the door, says something about like Operation something or other. Him and the pilot put on parachutes, and they just drop the plane out of the sky when they jump out and crash this boy band. So then the whole movie, Josie and the Pussycats, is them trying to figure out how to get this random band that they happen to walk past right after needing to replace the number one band in the world that they were marketing everything else through. And so the whole concept is sort of like, how do they fix something that was never working really well to begin with, but they've clearly put all this money into it. There's like government contracts that come up at one point. But the character I was about to reference, they have some like old tracks of the boy band that they're going to put out as like a posthumous album. So they go to a music store and they play these songs in the music store. And there's one character who is just this kind of teen angst girl. And she's like, I don't appreciate any of this. So they put a black bag over her head to throw in her van and take her to a place to reprogram her, basically.
Wow.
And it's one of my favorite movies. It's basically entirely about the mainstream media chasing its own tail, trying to figure out how to control the people.
Yeah, and they just really don't think about how real it is, because it sounds like a conspiracy, and it at times it can, but really it's right. It doesn't take a lot to learn about this stuff. It's just like, this is coming from like online classes and crash courses about music. And then
Right.
you can just go on these websites and just go buy these penny articles. And it's just like, can you imagine someone being rich and just being able to buy these articles at demand?
It's a fantastic, wild thing. It really, it's a bizarre thing because it shouldn't be legal when you really break it down.
No, it shouldn't.
Technically, lying isn't illegal though. Like it's an explicit thing that you can't lie under certain terms, but fucking with the narrative is totally legit according to the United States Constitution, at least. I don't know.
And it's just, I think that there needs to be someone in the media that's just got some type of morals, because if they're going to be doing gossip, because celebrities all the time will tip off gossip articles to promote their own work, and it's effective. A lot of times they use that to their advantage, and it's not necessarily always a bad thing, but really there needs to just be someone there with like the morals to understand what they're reporting. And really, because it's like that I don't know if you've seen that video with where they interviewed Chloe Melas. It was like BJ and a whole bunch of other people. If you don't know who that is, she's like a journalist for CNN, and
I
she
did
was on
see
the
that.
Wendy show.
Yeah, I did see that actually. But yeah, break it down like I didn't, because I'm sure many people listening will have not seen it.
And so it's just with her, it seems like talking to someone in a parallel universe, because she's talking about, oh, it's so hard to get these sources, and you just have to go through so much to get a reliable source, and sometimes not both sides want to talk. And it's just like thinking about people on these discussion boards online have been following her situation for years, trying to spread the word on getting her out of the situation she was in.
We're back to Brittany now. I don't think you mentioned that. You mentioned BJ.
Yeah, because on the Chloe Melas interview, just to give some background on that, they had interviewed her in regards to her reporting on Britney Spears' conservatorship, because she went on the Wendy Williams show to say how great Jamie Spears was, and that he brought her out of debt and all of this other stuff. And then, not to mention with her, it was like she just was under the impression that she wanted this conservatorship. And it's just like, there's people who are just random people and that have never met her that have more information that show that there is something wrong with this situation and this is what you're reporting. I just don't fully understand exactly how easy it is for whoever was telling her that benefited the conservatorship to
Mm.
get away with reporting something like that, with how hard she had to fight for the years to actually get to the point where she was able to speak up. It's just so, like, I don't understand how it's that easy for them, and I don't really understand how it
I
seems like.
do. It's money. It's that they get paid. So
Yeah.
here's the thing: when you get paid a lot of money, you have to figure out how to spend it, and that takes up a lot of your time. Do I go shopping? What do I want to eat? Should I get a house cleaner? Maybe I'll clean my own house. Maybe I'll buy a new vacuum. Maybe I'll get a new dishwasher. Like whatever. Should I buy a
Right.
new house? Do I want to move? Maybe I want to travel. Right? Like how much of their time is spent thinking about how they're going to flex and stunt on the rest of the world with the disproportionate capital that they are funneled in. Like it's all so. This is, I think, why people make a lot of late stage capitalism jokes about random anything ever these days, because it really is kind of about that. When, because these people,
Everything
it's not
just
like
goes
they're
back to capitalism.
right. They're not struggling to figure out how to make ends meet. They don't have the same day to day thoughts as a lot of the people that they're trying to affect and influence and manipulate. And
Yeah.
even with, like a situation like Britney's, it it can it can be very deceiving to people to be like, oh, she's got all this money. And in fact, the first episode that I had on
Right.
this show where I addressed Britney, my guest, who's a phenomenal, he's a professor of literature, he's a brilliant, amazing human being, and he was not convinced that her conservatorship was problematic. I'll say he wasn't. It took some doing. And our second episode together, he came back in and was like, "I really have something else to say now." Um,
Yeah.
the thing about her situation is like she can have whatever net worth she has. It could be accessible or not. But just what was it, like a month and a half ago? There was that incident where she was like in a car by herself, and people were like, "What are you doing here?" That happened, right? She had to
Something
get in
like that.
somebody else's
Yeah.
car, and it came and went so quickly from the media. Like there was no follow up, and nobody tried to use it as a. It was almost like there was an opportunity that they've taken before, or maybe like fabricated, or pushed her into, and there was just no follow up on this particular one. But she didn't have any money. She didn't know how to use the money she did have, if she did have money. Um, and so compared to that, these people that are getting paid to kind of circulate the narrative and manipulate it, they don't have that issue. They were smoothly tracked, usually through college and journalism of some kind, to get
Right.
into the position that they've got. They've got, you can assume, supportive community of origin, and
Yeah.
that they can have somebody hurt their feelings, and then they just turn to mommy or daddy, or turn to their fraternity or sorority, or they turn, what I'm saying, like they've got social capital, fiscal capital, and it's all moving along smoothly on this track. And they have to tell themselves that they did that. They have to tell themselves that they earned it, that it wasn't about inertia.
Right.
So there's some amount of personal obligation that these people have to kind of being right with themselves, and seeing themselves fairly in the world with the rest of us. Because part of
Yeah.
why somebody might come from a position like that and then do their worst at somebody like Wendy Williams or Britney Spears. It's interesting that Wendy Williams would host space for somebody to come on and justify why Britney deserves to be in a conservatorship and how it was good for her all along, and then Wendy ends up in the situation she's in. I just turned my own stomach a little bit saying it like that.
It's funny that you bring that up because it really goes to show how much the media can oversaturate what's out
Mhm.
there and control the narrative. She actually, when she found out, she was like, really just like, shame on you, Jamie Spears. You had me fooled, and just
Yeah.
going off about the family that actually happened not too long before her situation. But it really goes to show how easy it is for the things that we're pumping all of these social media posts about to be going unnoticed by the rest of the world because of the algorithms and the people out there pushing the wrong narrative on social media to control that. So it's just really, it can be a frustrating thing for someone who maybe not experienced it for the whole world, but knows what it's like to have your family lie about you or try to cover up something. Like, it's just, you kind of can relate that back to your own experiences and can empathize and feel bad for people in a way that other people don't, because they usually don't care.
Right.
It's just like, oh, they're famous, they're fabulous, and they have this luxurious life, so why should I care? Like, type of attitude.
Yeah, that is a lot of it. People's empathy and compassion gets diffused by their jealousy, and that's also late stage capitalism. There's such a
Yeah, and then
distinct divide.
what's interesting about and I don't have, it's very hard to find these articles about this particular subject, probably for a reason, but there was an incident where I believe Jamie Spears was found to have been spying on fans. There was one girl who's BJ, that incident's happened to her more than once that could go back to multiple people, but she's pointed out like people spying on her in public. But that makes me wonder about the social media, because during this time, I have been trying to talk a lot about her trademarks and how that can influence the control over the public narrative, and then giving the wrong person money for products with her face and name all over it. It's just like, the trademarks is a whole other situation, but I'll have to get into that separately. But it's like, it's so oversaturated right now with conspiracy theories around her. If you say something like that, it can be considered like, oh, you don't really know all of this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I noticed when I first brought that up, I had a whole Instagram page taken down. At the time, Jamie Spears owned the company known as Britney Brands. And I was pointing out that I'm getting like all these ads for Britney Spears products, coloring books, and like a tarot card deck, and Funko Pop figures, all of this stuff that was licensed by Britney Brands.
What the? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, first of all, I doubt nothing about what you're saying, and second of all, it makes perfect sense to me that Lou
Right.
Taylor and Jamie Spears would sit together, and that's the solution they would come up with to distract you, right? Like, they're like, we'll get him,
Yeah.
we'll take you down, and we'll give you something to think about.
Right.
These motherfuckers.
And it's like, what I noticed is I was in this Facebook group that was literally called Free Britney. And I made a post about it, which I showed the information from open corporates, and then I kind of explained about how the whole Britney Brands things works, and the licenses and the royalties, and how that type of thing is done. And I would get all of these comments just either just saying flat out that I'm a conspiracy theorist, or just saying that, oh, it all belongs to her now. I would go on these Facebook accounts and they would be fake. Like, some of them would be real people, and they would debate back and forth with you for hours. But like, I remember there was one that was totally a fake account, and she just flat out of nowhere while we were debating, she's just like, well, you basically just called me stupid. And I was like, no, I didn't. She was like, the whole thread went away. But yeah, I would notice that they were fake accounts, and I'm just like, like, did my little catfish thing there, and I didn't have the resources to just trace it back to someone. But yeah, a lot of those accounts were fake, and then I eventually got removed from the group not long after this, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I don't know what that was about, but that made me much more suspicious about it, because up until now, where the trademarks is a little different, but the company's now owned by like Michael Caine or something, but Jamie Spears absolutely still owns Louisiana branch because he is the CEO and like the whole board of directors, and I believe that's the main one. I'm not sure. I would have to look back at like my notes on it, but it took me until after they had made some changes on the company to make it kind of look like you couldn't really see who it belonged to, or that it was in Michael Caine's control before I was able to even freely post about that online without getting in trouble with the social media companies.
Unreal.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like it would be something that would be that big of a deal, but it's concerning because, like Kesha, for example, it's my understanding that she had some type of ownership with the branched record label she was on with Sony under her Kesha, where it was spelled with a $sign, and I'm not sure if that's 100% the case. But after she started making music of her own, I would say, outside of working with Dr. Luke, she would use just Kesha, just spelled without a $sign. That's kind of a similar thing with the trademarks, but with Britney Spears, she had all these different trademarks, and it's just like they have everything with her name on it, so it's just like hundreds of different word marks. Anything you could imagine, really. But in 2018, while she was still under the conservatorship, the trademarks were signed away, and it was a document called like a trademark reassignment, and you can go on the USPTO and look at that just by searching Britney Spears, because it's got everything there. But in 2018, those trademarks were signed away to this company called Baby One More Mark LLC, which was established in Delaware, and we don't really know exactly who owns it. Yeah.
What?
But yeah, so Baby
Wait, how
One
do you
More
know all
Mark.
that much, but you don't know who owns it?
So the thing is, and there's a documentary about the Panama Papers, and when people are just saying as a general for legal reasons, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but there's press out there that is. When people are like money laundering or they're doing something they don't want someone to see, they will often create these shell companies in Delaware because you can't easily look up who owns it like you can in other states. So we can see in the trademark documents that Jamie Spears was the manager, and that Andrew Wallet was also involved somehow, who ironically were the people who also signed on Britney Spears' behalf to give these trademarks to the company, which I think is totally unfair. But they were
it's possible to run so much illegal game, that you supersede the law's ability to chase you down with consequences. That is possible theoretically, and they are trying to do that.
Yeah, and it makes me have questions about her trademarks and what control that gives them, because obviously what you're going to assume is Baby One More Mark LLC, whoever that is now, owns the trademarks to issue Britney Brands and Epic Rights permission to let people use that name on the products. But I don't really understand what they would need to be hiding other than Britney Spears not being able to control her own work, and even down to her own social media possibly, which could, according to the word marks and the details of the word marks that I've read, social media would cover this. And her Facebook and Twitter were, when you submit like an example of the trademark being used, you send in specimen, and her Facebook and Twitter were used for that. So
why my brain is, I'm trying not to let it melt in my skull right now over the idea that somebody's personhood and business, like, we have a right to do business. We have a right to like transact and perform. And like, she's stunning. She's beautiful. She's talented. I didn't know that she played the piano until literally yesterday. And I can't wrap my mind around the idea that like if it was me and my social media, I am so messy with my social media. I do and say whatever I want on my business accounts and my personal accounts. Sometimes
Yeah.
I mix my personal shit into my business accounts because I can.
Hmm.
And I cannot wrap my mind around the idea of like abusive parents. And like Lou Taylor kind of reminds me of, my family was into religious cult performing arts more than, well, I get, the more I'm looking at Hollywood, the more I'm like, it's just a religious cult
Yeah.
also. But
Same manipulation tactics, really.
yeah. And so my point is, I know Lou Taylor, like not personally me and Lou, but people like her are not difficult to come by. They start ministries. They want to be the head of an organization. They want to get paid a lot of money to not really do much and have other people's labor sort of like continue their passive income, that they basically just get up, look pretty, and smile to continue getting. Uh, so I really can't wrap my mind around that trademark laws could provide an opportunity for this scale of abuse.
Yeah, and it's a crazy thing to think about because this means that her whoever owns it's really complicated as far as who does what. As of right now,
Uh-huh.
my understanding is Michael Caine has all of those positions other than the Louisiana uh, branch, and I'm not sure if that is the main one or if it's a branch of the one in California, but that's the only thing he's in control over. So Michael Caine controls all of these other random companies that were created to help Britney Spears do things.
Help,
Um,
help.
yeah,
One thing that is certainly happening. I don't know what they want to be happening, what their intention is. I don't know if they're reaching their goals at all or inching close to them in any way. But what is definitely happening, um, anyone who is following Britney Spears on social media is baffled. Like even, and I feel like I get it. Like I feel like I understand what's happening, and I'm still like, wow, this is what's going
mhm.
on today. Like, okay, what's next? And the way that the posts are coming out, it really is unclear to me whether they are her or not, and which ones of them are her or not. I
I
suppose.
actually found this out because my cousin was like looking for work at home jobs, and I sent her one of like there's these different companies where you can actually just work on your own time and transcribe things. My
Mm.
understanding is that CrowdSurf is involved with her social media, and CrowdSurf actually has people who transcribe videos, and that what they're essentially saying and what I'm assuming is considering what CrowdSurf does is that she would be speaking into a video or talking to someone and then they would type out the posts for her.
That
I
it
can't
does
say,
look transcribed
yeah,
or like speech to text or something like that a lot of the time. Um,
yes,
so that makes sense.
yeah.
Okay. And
So
then if
that
different people
is,
are doing the transcriptions, then it would flow differently every time. That's really an answer.
and
Like,
if you like really pay close attention to it, which like with me writing about the subject with their trademarks, I'd have like talked to a lot of the people who have a lot of really interesting theories that aren't necessarily on point, but they've got some truth to them. Like her, you can if you really pay close attention to what she posts, you can often see that it does seem like it was posted by a different person each time.
mhm.
uh, and that just kind of is just like, yeah, I think it's just a transcription. I don't really know if it's just they're told to just put emojis on there just because, or if that's something that she requests. But that's what they say, is that it's just kind of a transcription situation, which CrowdSurf, I can confirm, I know for a fact, is they transcribe videos.
What do you make of the duplicate posts where she's posting the same dances, same outfit, same room?
I don't really know. There's like this secret blogger who I don't really know what to make of. He's gotten a lot of scandals right, and he does these blind items, and a lot of people just follow every single thing he writes. Which, in my honest opinion, I do see that he's gotten a lot of scandals right, and then he has also said a lot of things that most people wouldn't know about these things. But at times it's just like, I don't know, really it's the same thing like with these media. You don't know who he's talking to. Like, yeah, he says he's a lawyer, but did he read this from a court document or did he read this from chatting with someone in court? So a lot of times it's just, especially with him not wanting to name people until after the scandal comes out, you just want to take it with a grain of salt. But they have really been concerned that her social media is being used to benefit someone who's not her, whether, which is one of the things that makes you concerned about the trademarks, because it does give them a good deal of control over how her name is used, and that leaves a lot of loopholes and potential what ifs. But there's a lot of just rumors surrounding saying that her social media is being used to make money off of her. She's posting a lot of reels, and I don't know if you have like a professional Instagram profile set up like that, but after you reach a certain amount of followers, you can get paid to post reels, and you get paid by the view. So hypothetically, her or someone is making a great deal of money from the reels that she posts to her account.
I actually forgot all about that feature because I turned all of my professional accounts back into personal accounts so that I could put music on them, because not all the songs are available on the professional accounts. You can't sound search for everything, so that makes sense. That actually makes a ton of sense, because it would be, that's passive income if they don't have to create new content in any way. And they now have a firm business model in confusion, because people will come just to say, this doesn't make any sense. Brittany, are you okay? You're sick in the head. You need help. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So if by her necessarily, and it's just so weird because a lot of the fans, which I think most people are really on point with the things that they're speaking out about. I do think there's a lot of legal issues, and I do think that the people need to be held accountable. And I don't judge her lawyer, because I'm not a lawyer, but I do have a lot of questions based on what the other lawyers say.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. But with her, it's like people can be invasive, and it's almost counterproductive. It's almost like it can create her fans into a scapegoat for her story to then be silenced. Because once people start speaking out about the trademarks and her lawyer and her brand and just all of these other things that don't make any sense at all, then you start seeing all these conspiracy theories about her being a clone and under mind control, and someone needs to save her and she's been kidnapped and all of this other stuff. It does make it kind of like, it does make it look like that by people speaking out about these things, that it's creating something that was just as invasive as the media was, in a sense. And it could be a way for even her not to even know about what people's real concerns are, because she groups that with what people think. So just interesting thing that I read on Twitter. I followed this woman who's an activist specifically for this kind of thing. Her name is Lisa McCarley, and she actually goes to the court cases, and she had said something about, I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was, she's not saying mean things about him or anything like that. She is criticizing and asking certain questions, but she did say something about, Rosengart said to her that it was making his client upset that she was saying things about him. And she kind of said something like, oh yeah, he just pulled me aside to say that. And I just thought that was really odd. And I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that's not the truth.
No, it's weird. It's fucking weird. It's totally weird. Why is he even? That's the thing. When BJ talks about, like, because MTV has been making such a, not MTV, but like Steve-O, specifically Steve-O, Nikki,
Steve-O, yeah,
like a handful of fucks. They acknowledge her and argue with her on the talking point that she started, which is the opposite of what you do from a position of power with PR. Like, if you engage with the thing, then you've given attention to it, and now what's everybody that knows about it supposed to do besides watch and see what comes of it? Like, it's kind of simple math.
Yeah.
But if he's going to go, it's just thou doth protest too much. But these people are human beings. It's really weird to me to see how easy it is to trigger them right now, which I've been saying for a long time. I think that the fourth wall of Hollywood has fallen down already, and we can see literally into these people's bathrooms and bedrooms, and none of us were prepared for that embarrassment, like as the masses, quote unquote, or whatever. But then no one was ready for that wall to really come down. So
no, not at all.
Man, they're messing
Especially
up.
the
I mean,
people
they're ill prepared to not mess up. And I sought not to go. We were just talking about conspiracy theories and various things, but somebody sent me a TikTok video that got me following this person who had posted it, and I went further down his little rabbit hole. But he was talking about like the Illuminati protocols of having to kind of like tell people what you're doing before you manipulate the masses or whatever. And he was reading from some supposed document that I had never heard this exact rhetoric before, but I think he said it was Rockefeller writing. Don't quote me on that, but it was essentially about if they ever find out what we're up to, we will have no mercy, no quarter anywhere on this earth. There's not going to be a single place for us to run, because the entire illusion that we're creating of being elite is an illusion. So if they ever figure out who it is that's manipulating the strings and start equalizing and humanizing, that's literally humanity, then this very small group of deviants, essentially of moral deviants, who want to be better than everybody else, who want to believe that we're better and we want them to believe that we're better, will just have nowhere to run. So that it really makes sense for them to be in a state of panic. Don't look at me, just don't look at me. Rosa.
Yeah, it's like, it's really not that far off. That's why I really think a lot of these conspiracy theorists, they're just kind of, a lot of conspiracy theories, it just seems like making sense of really complicated things that no one should have to understand. Like when it comes to the media and the manipulation, and a lot of times these patterns that we talk about in these abuse cases and in these times where the media is manipulated to silence a victim in social media, that a lot of those things get brought up in conspiracy theories. And you notice a lot of the stuff thinking about Britney Spears now, a lot of the stuff that concerned the same people who wanted her out of her conservatorship were also concerning the conspiracy theorists, just for different reasons. But when you look back at it, a lot of it was based off of the fact that she was under control, and she quite literally was. It might not have been like a hypnosis, mind control type of deal, but unfortunately that did come out to be true.
Well, I mean, just seeing the small sliver of chaos and conflict that we got to glimpse in on with like K-Fed and the kids, it looks pretty basic. Like, it looks pretty simplistic as far as the types of psychology that we're working with. They're very Louisiana. They're just a regular broken family. But the manipulation, the parental alienation, the brainwashing and programming, it's impacting more than just their family because of the amount of people that have a parasocial bond with Britney. I don't even really, I mean, like prior to, not that I disliked Britney specifically, I just wasn't doing any pop at the time when I started to become concerned about her being in a conservatorship and what I was hearing around that. But a lot of the parasocial bond with Britney, a lot of the people involved in it weren't necessarily there because we were minds that were being marketed to with just her music. A pretty heavy percentage of her current fan base is people who were like maybe averse to her music, averse to the style of performance, and we're here because what's been done to her is intolerable. And at this point now, Work Bitch is on a daily playlist of mine. I listen to it almost every single day of my life. It gasses me up. Like, so they couldn't have planned for me. Like they could not have possibly they're not smart enough to even know somebody like me exists. They're not smart enough to know somebody like you exists before. And this is like the Lou Taylor, Jamie Spears element. Most of the lawyers too, definitely the judges involved in any of this stuff. It's like they can be in this position where they seem very important. But if you really think about it, a judge is somebody who gets up and plays like they put on a costume and have people call like oh, Your Honor, like it's all a game,
Right.
like all of it,
Yeah.
and they get paid a lot of like $600,000 a year to do that. So that they go, it's all delusional at that point. They think they're so important. Look how much money I make, but the money makes them more immature. Like the money puts them in a position where they
Right.
don't have to grow. They don't get challenged and therefore then have to grow.
Exactly.
I just split the conversation in like 7 different directions, I think. I don't know.
You're good. There's so
Okay.
many different things contributing to these problems. Like just the media is the big thing that I've been looking into just because from my experiences, I started to piece things together that way. But like the legal system has so much to do with abuse. Like you can't even know where to begin with the judges and the lawyers. But I think it was a lot of these situations are about the money more so than the person, because a lot of times, like with me, I can relate to Britney Spears in a lot of ways in regards to my relationships with my family, but that aspect was a little different because for them it was more of just having control, but it seems like the people around her wanted the money, and she was really for probably over 2 decades has probably made, despite her net worth, she's probably made billions of dollars because she is just
Absolutely.
really,
I cannot, but
yeah,
the amount of money they're claiming her net worth to be, but then this is the same network of people that overinflated Kylie Cosmetics. Like this is the same network. Like they're not,
exactly.
it's not different worlds. It's not different piercings. It's literally the same community manipulating. That's another element of it too, where I'm like, okay, so they've got all this income and all this money, but if they didn't just start lying right now, they didn't just start lying when we caught them lying. Like how far back does all this go, and how much as much as I don't want to believe it, is this simple to create like pretty permanent harm in the world. If somebody is getting more than they deserve, if they're being disproportionately compensated, that has to come from somewhere. And the amount of positive attention that revolves around people who are clearly doing devious things, like it's kind of to get back to the group of us and the social and psychological dynamics of the people sort of revolving around Britney, including Free Britney. A lot of people are Britney fans because we insist that the world be a fair and just place as much as it possibly can be. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of people motivated to create right now. I think probably more people than I've ever seen in my life are interested in starting their own business or getting to a point where they can be more aggressive in accelerating what they're doing so that they can occupy space that they were kind of encouraged to stay away from. Like it's like, if you're going to be a big dog, then you've got to be vicious and horrible and have no morals. And it's like, well, no, if we all stay out of that realm to avoid being amoral, then it's only going to be amoral people that are occupying that realm.
Yeah, and it's like that's the good thing about the music industry now, especially like when I was like 17, I put out an EP, and it's just like I cringe at like hearing the songs, but apparently they're not that bad. But that is something I wanted. Yeah, well, you can like look up my name, and they're like on Spotify and stuff, but that's kind of where I got a lot of my experience, and I want to get back into that, but it's like if I start telling people I'm a musician now, it's just like they go to these songs and it's just like, oh, I was really young and that's just not me anymore. But kind of off topic, but yeah, that's where I learned about the media and how easy it was, because it was, as long as I had the funds and resources to do it, really it was not that hard for me to take the jobs that all of these tens of people that the music industry hires to do and just do it myself. It is
Mm-hmm.
hard work, but a lot of artists are choosing to do that now because the music industry is so difficult to navigate because you really don't know who you can trust. Because if I were to go to like a musicians conference, uh, it's always somebody there that comes up in the things we talk about, or in the Britney Spears case, like there's Lou Taylor speaking at this convention, or Larry Rudolph, or Dr. Luke, and it's just like all the things that you would go to make connections and advance your career are people that you've heard from other places that you just shouldn't trust. So it's a very, like, I think that anyone who just chooses to do it all on their own and put in that effort, it's just like it's the better option, because at the end of the day, you know, your work is protected.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're probably getting to a point where there's going to be a tipping in the scales of justice, and because really it's sort of just about motivation. Like during the period of time where Lou Taylor was really kind of getting her teeth in, um, I think a lot of people were ready to be passive. Like there just weren't these industrial doorways, or there's a lot of pathways to move your work around, and not that there weren't some amounts of variety you could find in pathways to success in arts, but uh it was mostly just open calls and auditions and various things. And then
Yeah.
we got American Idol, and now we've got like The Voice, and Simon fucking Cowell is involved in all these crazy things.
Yes.
And then it's not just even about
Larry
they brought
Rudolph.
right. They brought
Yeah.
some of the man people, some of the Simon Cowell vibes, the Lou Taylor vibes. Like Lou Taylor probably was offered.
Yeah.
I bet there's been a lot of jokes about how she could be a Simon Cowell, or like there could be a role for her like that.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I'll occupy this hybridic space where I'm not quite in the media, but I am, but I'm not.
Right. And it makes it to where if someone accuses you of abuse, unless it's something crazy, it's easy to cover up. No one knows who you are. And you can still go get clients, because if someone who is a famous singer gets accused of abuse, it's going to be all over the headlines, but people don't know your face like that. So you can go to these different conventions and talk to people and their parents and whatnot, and you can just go there and actively
Mhm.
do it, because people aren't just looking for your face. And that's just what makes it hard to navigate the music industry, is because if you're not always on Twitter and YouTube and watching documentaries and YouTube videos and talking to people who have had personal experience already in that field with those people, you would just you don't know what you're getting yourself into, in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. The technology is certainly changing, the social technology and the practical technology to record and produce all kinds of media. Things are changing, but then at the same time, the sort of juxtaposed industries, or like the side channel industries, are changing too. What you've what you've brought to us today about Britney brands, that's a fascinating concept that I
Yeah.
really
And
hadn't thought about. Things like that, like that there's like coloring books and tarot cards, Britney themed fucking tarot cards, of course.
yeah, there's everything. And if you go through, it's like the website's uspto.report. If you type in Britney Spears, it's a lot to go through. But I mean, you can just really go through a few things and you can kind of get the idea of what's going on. There's just
I
a
will
lot of
definitely be
really,
doing that. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, there's just there's too many things to even just say at one time that are problems. Like some of the contracts she did sign before the conservatorship, it was just a line in the signature. And I'm not really certain that someone who signs autographs all day is just going to put a line on a contract, but that's just my opinion. Uh,
Huh.
but really, there's just so many things there to question, because there's a company called Miss Britney Recording. that is based in some other state that is thought to own her masters, but we don't really have a way to see that because it's not public information like all this other stuff is.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really nuts to me is I was on a discussion forum and I actually brought forth the research I did on this and made it into a post. And months later, all over Twitter, Britney Spears now owns the rights to her brand. Britney owns her trademarks, but nothing changed. That was the gag, is nothing changed. It was like an old document from 2009 where she was listed as the owner or something. And really, you just had to kind of read to understand that that wasn't what happened. And I mean, you can just look on here. There wasn't really anything else filed in regards to all of her trademarks since 2018, when all of those hundreds of word marks in different categories were assigned to that company that appears to be made specifically for her trademarks based on the name.
Phenomenal. Literally, what a phenomenon.
Yeah, and it's like I'm in the process because I made a YouTube video about it, and at first I thought she didn't even have trademarks until 2009. And I'm like, oh, wait, I have to put out this correction and say that there's actually stuff further going back, and this was just a different word mark and all of these other complications. And right now I'm supposed to be making a full timeline of the trademarks so that it makes sense. But like I'm just kind of stumped with what exactly this means. So it's like, I'm not sure if it's like we don't really know what this means because certain things can be worked out privately or just what all of that is about. But really, it just does seem like she shouldn't be able to fully control. Well, it's obvious she's not in control at this point, just based off of the receipts that I have seen, that she's not controlling the products that are released with her name on it. But then it leaves like social media and her website and all of this other stuff, music she releases, the cover art, not the actual music itself, but the cover art is considered a musical work, and that is something that is one of those trademarks.
Okay, so to simplify this, basically, while she was in the conservatorship, and potentially before, but definitely while she was in the conservatorship, manipulative parties that she has repeatedly claimed are abusive and she wants nothing to do with have created a legal entanglement to where even after the conservatorship has ended, rights to her identity and business doings are not in her hands.
Hypothetically, yes. So of course she is Britney Spears. She can spend whatever money belongs to her. She can. There's a care plan. Rosengart says that there's not a care plan. Jody Montgomery said there was. The case has been sealed, so we don't know. It's illegal for Rosengart to lie if he knows that there is. So it would be safe for me to assume that there's no care plan and that it just didn't go through. But
does it have to be called a care plan?
I don't even know.
That's
like
it. With the way they work, I bet it's the same damn thing, but called something different. And he gets to say, there's no that. And then the other person's like, well, there's that. Like,
right.
Nobody's lying, but everybody's wrong or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm hoping that Jody's request just did not go through and that there is no care plan, and that's why he said that. But the trademarks, it just raises concerns because, so according to some journalists who drove out to some address, Jamie Spears is like in a RV or something, like outside of a warehouse that has a whole bunch of her products. And if you go on Open Corporates along with checking with like the California Secretary of State website, which is where all that information comes from, it does show him still basically the entire board of directors. So a CEO is usually, a board of directors is going to be above them, but he is that quite literally. So he's the sole director of Britney Brands in Louisiana still. So it makes me wonder if...
I thought there was oh no, that's just with nonprofits. There's like an obligation for a certain amount of board members. But for a private company, you don't necessarily have to have a board, right?
Right. And I'm still having trouble keeping up with the branches. So my understanding is that the main Britney Brands is the one that is in Louisiana. And it shows Jamie Spears as the director, president, secretary, and treasurer, and also shows him listed as the CEO on other documents. I thought that it was updated to Michael Caine. I'm actually checking the documents now. Okay, so most recently on the Louisiana Secretary of State website, it does say that Michael Caine is now in that position.
You're
So this would have been
amazing.
something.
I love you
Yes.
checking on your own data in real time. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Oh,
so the
man.
most accurate place to go to is the actual Secretary of State of whatever state it's in. Sometimes the documents are free, sometimes it costs like $2, but really it should all be public. So like if someone buys it beforehand, they'll usually post it online. If you go on the Breathe Heavy website, which ironically was, we had a whole thing with us not being allowed to talk about research on there and the mods always having problems. So they actually created, working with one of the other people who had been researching on there for so long, like a whole research club so that people could stop complaining about it overcrowding the news, as they say. But then we were
Fair, I
allowed to
guess.
talk about this stuff. Yeah.
One thing I feel like I'm more sure about this, but I started kind of theorizing a couple of weeks ago. I think a majority of I'm calling it the Free People movement, and I'm hoping that we can do the Free People Party when BJ runs for president. But I think that a
Yeah.
good chunk of us are autistic with some form of trauma disorder, either PTSD or CPTSD, and that those two phenomenons together, primarily undiagnosed autistic, I think that there's a lot of like specific niche fixation with the people that are active, and we all sort of have our own approach to what's the most important part. And where I started to kind of think like, oh shit, is this what I'm seeing? Is when I realized that all of these different parts click together and work like a machine,
Yeah.
or a vehicle, and we're going somewhere. I don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere. And not necessarily everybody, but I have definitely, I've had some pretty extended conversations with a few people that like somewhere in the conversation, I'm like, I think that's what's going on here. So it would make sense for Breathe Heavy to get busy, if you will,
Yeah.
with the research. And then also I imagine there's probably a whole population of people that are paid to be reactionary or.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That website in particular, I don't know. I don't necessarily have any bad thoughts about the website specifically, but often I wonder how they screen mods. Like, I don't know if this is all people who know each other in person or if it's just people who get brought on. But I almost wonder if there's just a whole bunch of people on here to run accounts, because before I started actually really frequently talking to people on here who were also researching, I was often kind of, I had to like mute people or whatever because I would just always get people calling me a conspiracy theorist and just kind of this bullying behavior when I would make these threads. And even a mod, I literally wrote a petition. It was like just a petition that said, send Britney Brands a request to make a statement on whether or not they actually are associated with Britney Spears. And it was literally just that. And then it got taken down and called a conspiracy theory.
That's not a theory. That's a request. What the fuck?
Like this is, it's just like all it is clarity. So if there's something that's not reported or something that has been agreed upon, then it will clarify that. It would make people not feel like that it's a scam. So it's like quite literally that, because it's just, in my opinion, if this ends up being something that Britney Spears has zero control over and it's just people making money off of her image, to me that's a scam, because it's just, it has nothing to do with her. So it's just like, did she even give permission to do this? Or yeah, it's just, in my opinion, it comes off as a scam.
What a bummer.
Yeah.
What
It's
a
a lot of
goddamn bummer.
things.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping I can get to some conclusion on my video because I was hoping to have it out a lot sooner, but I'm just so lost in regards to the trademarks because I can't really say for certain. I'm just failing to make sense of with it being in Delaware and not being able to just easily see who runs the company and what position they're in. It doesn't really give us a clear idea of what that actually means for Britney Spears the person, because all we know is that if you go on the trademark documents, it does give a clue that he's in control of the company, because on the signature, not only is Jamie Spears and Andrew Wallet signing this on her behalf, but the same people are signing on behalf of the company that it's being signed to. So that's obviously a conflict of interest in my opinion, because then like how is Britney, like she doesn't even have to be present in the room. She was just wrapping up a tour in England or something when this went down, because like literally like days before the date on the document, she was on the Piece of Me tour, like in the UK somewhere. So it's just like she didn't even necessarily have to be in the room.
Right.
It could
Well, there's
potentially
precedent for that kind of nonsense too. Michael Jackson's will was allegedly signed when he was in a different part of the world on tour.
There's a disturbing connection between the Michael Jackson, a few disturbing connections, and you might have seen this because BJ made a video about it, between Michael Jackson and Britney Spears.
She didn't get all the way into it, but she cracked a couple doors open. She didn't like bust the door open. She was just like, there's a door here. Everyone pay attention. We're coming back to that later. And she's been totally busy with Lima's fucking lawsuit.
Yeah. But what that could mean, it could also mean that Sony is trying to get a hold of everything before Britney does, because it lists him as the manager. But while reviewing some documents for the Pussycat Dolls, I did notice a similar company, like for their trademarks, where Universal and her company that she created for the Pussycat Dolls would kind of both at the same time own these trademarks. And you don't really, since it's in Delaware, you don't see that. It almost makes me wonder if Michael Caine is doing something to take control over Britney's trademarks and work, and maybe even her masters for whatever reason. But that can kind of tie back to Sony, because Michael Jackson had spoken out about Sony a lot, and two of the people that we see on a lot of the documents with Britney Spears is Geraldine Weil, I think her name was, the lawyer, and Michael Caine. They both actually worked with Michael Jackson, and at the time, I believe Michael Caine was in control of managing his brand and whatnot, and was his manager during the time that he died. So that raises a whole other separate set of questions. But
for consistency, is it correct that Prince also was with Sony Music, and that's why he had to start going by the artist formerly known as Prince, because he could not use his actual name anymore? That's Sony too, right?
I believe it is, yes. Same situation for sure. He did not have control, to my understanding, to just use his name to release music, so he had used that symbol to be able to regain control, because he's not releasing under the name Prince. Kind of similar how you see with Kesha changing the way that her name is spelled. I'm sure there's other artists who have also had to do that, but JoJo had a similar situation, but she actually signed away the rights to her voice, so she could not sell music with her voice in it, even if it didn't have her name on it necessarily. So that's like,
oh wow,
that's what
I heard about something with her, but I didn't realize it was that. That's some Little Mermaid bullshit. That's like fantasy stuff. Like, this is bad magic. Like,
and it's just crazy, because she had to fight for years to be able to she had a Bandcamp account, so she would make kind of mixtapes that you could just download or listen to, but
Huh.
she was not legally allowed to sell her own music because her voice belonged to this record label that no longer exists and doesn't want to give it up.
How is that even a thing? I cannot, I'm really just like, I can't swallow that one. I gotta spit that pill back out. I don't even believe in it. I know it happened, but I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, these people are doing things that are not real. Like,
It's insane. It's the control over the narrative has a big thing to do with it, because when you control the person like that, when you can have non-disclosure agreements, they can't say the details of their contract, or they can't say what happened this day. And then on top of that, you have the final say in what type of music they make, what type of song they do. And yeah, it's just a really big problem in the music industry, and it's why it's so important to be careful when you're an independent artist, because like I said, if you go to these conventions, or there was even one company one time that I sent some music to as a submission, and I ended up seeing that they like Lou Taylor, they followed Lou Taylor or something crazy like that. But you really like these people, they're not hiding away. Like Lou Taylor and Dina LaPolt were just at a People's Powerful Women convention or something the other day
no way.
that they were doing photo. Yeah,
Ew.
it was like Lou Taylor's literally just like, she's going to these high class events, creating this image for herself and all of this other stuff, just like, and just existing like nothing's wrong. It's just like, really put this lady in jail. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a world where Paris Hilton is referring to Queen Elizabeth as a girl boss, you know, I guess I can see this being a thing too.
Yeah, it's like that movie Don't Look Up. Like, everyone is just so blind to the things that are going on around them.
Man. Yo, I think there's enough of us with like, we don't even need the They Live glasses. We've got just like 100 vision. Fuck 2020. I don't know what I'm getting at, but like, I can't help but see through this shit. And I think that's why I didn't like pop music when I was like, you know, Britney who or whatever. Like, I think I shied away eventually. I got full. It's like when you go to the fair and you're eating a bunch of cotton candy and it's so wonderful, and then you get that first stomach ache when you're a kid when someone lets you overindulge or whatever. Like, something happened where I had gotten full up on processed trash sugar, and I just got an aversion to it and dipped out. Thought I was being all edgy and like, oh, I just do things that aren't really on. And I had no idea why I was attracted to that kind of vibe. And then the next thing I know, it's just shoved right in my face that like that world that I shied away from is full of predators that are hurting, manipulating the image of, and then hurting like some of the sweetest people. Like, they're, you know, like Britney screaming at Alexa Nicholas aside, she went back and apologized later, and you know, like, she continues to shine through as a compassionate person who's going through significant amounts of trauma and trying to figure out how to be a person in this world. I hope she can feel our support as much as we could feel her pain all along. I hope
that's what I'm just saying. Like, I just hope that when someone who can not necessarily understand everything that she's had to go through, but know just the familial abuse and how unique that situation can be, and how it can affect you. It's just like, there's a lot of us out there, and I didn't really realize that until I joined the book club, but in the Discord group, like, yeah, I didn't realize how similar a lot of other people's stories are to ours and hers at times. So it's just like, I hope she sees that and she's not just seeing all the people with negative opinions.
I think we've been making enough of a stink. The people I see, I started to take the initiative of being a loud motherfucker that kicks up dust all in the comments section as much as I can. And I for a while, I've had a philosophy where I will talk to people in the comment section, but as soon as I start to feel like I'm having an ineffective conversation, they immediately become a stage for me to perform what I have to say on top of. So it doesn't matter what's
Right.
said around me. I have a purpose, and I'm going to continue figuring out ways to express that purpose in that space. But even I myself and a couple people that I've met through the Free Britney movement, we've had some moments in the last couple of months where it's really difficult to deny that somebody on the other side of Britney's profile is responding to the things we're saying and doing. We're all just people.
Yeah,
It's a
a lot
small
of
way.
times.
Say again?
Right. A lot of times I do think that that could also be a marketing ploy. Like, say, if it's not her and someone is kind of responding
Mm-hmm.
to certain things in a certain way or not responding, just that could totally be like a marketing or press thing, because if she's going to still have a publicist. So I imagine that there is a whole lot of like stuff that they're not really going to even know what to make of in regards to PR, just because
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much chaos, especially when it comes to the media. So it's just like, I can imagine the publicist's job in that case would be very confusing and difficult, because it's
That
just like,
person's just
okay, how
getting
do
paid to
we?
occupy a position at this point. Like, there's
Yeah,
no, unless
like,
they're an actual psychic or like they time traveled from the future to come back here and be like, wait, like, there's no way. It's too new. It's all so, and it's like meta as fuck. Like, it's just, there's so many overlapping, intersecting worlds in this one
yeah.
space now.
It's like an empire was built around her without her say, in a sense. So now
Mm.
there's all this mess to clean up, because it's like you think of the Britney brands and then you think about Vegas and their nonsense with the finances and how they were involved with her shows. And it's just like, yeah, it goes back to capitalism for sure, but somebody, whether it was her dad or Lou Taylor or Sony, RCA, her record label, somebody was there that was like building this empire around her, because she was like I said, she's probably brought in billions and billions of dollars for
Mm-hmm.
people, but then her net worth is only $50 million. So where has all that money been going? So it's just like this
That doesn't.
empire was kind of built around her almost as an ATM for other people.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yo. Ugh. Yeah. And then it's they all want to be an emperor until they realize that the empire has people that have to live it. Like, we're humans. We're not just wallets to open up and buy their crap
Right.
products. Like, we
Right.
have. I don't think they thought about that or cared about that. But I don't know. It's a trip to how their family straddles from Disney and just straight into Dan Schneider shit. Like, I don't really know I'm like, how magical that they could manage to find so many devious and evil people to try and feed their children to.
Yeah, that's kind of why it's great that there's so many different people, especially so many experts researching this, just because if you research this for long enough, you'll find some pretty bizarre ties between Britney Spears's finances and all these other random people. That's kind of how the whole Kardashian conversation started.
Oof.
Because if you just sit there and make these connections, you'll see like just these random connections. Caesar's Palace. Then
Mm-hmm.
Caesar's Palace has connections to this place, and then somehow we end up in Russia. So it's just, if you really research it, or like
Oh my
if you
God,
spend
we
enough
do.
time researching it, it really shows you how bizarre that finances are and how like where our money is going. Because it's like, as the
Uh-huh.
fans, if you were listening to her music or buying her products, part of that money's yours. So it's a whole bunch of people's money, but we are quite literally not only giving these people our money, but generating money by creating conversations and contributing to the algorithm of social media. Like, we are literally generating this money. So yeah, we quite literally are being used as pawns in that case, because they know
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to buy it without thinking about stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, just it's just so weird, because I feel like if it's our money, then we should care where it's going. Like,
Yeah.
especially if wanting to support someone, or we're under the guise that we're supporting someone. That's why I feel like it's false advertising if they're selling products with her face that she doesn't necessarily want, because then you have people who are buying these products because they think that they're supporting her.
She has said many, many times that she's been dissatisfied with the choices made about her image, too. Like,
Yeah,
that's, you know.
especially the pictures they put out, and she said that a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
it almost makes me wonder if she can't talk about the Britney brand situation, or if someone's working on it. But it's been a year and not much has changed other than Michael Caine, who allegedly she didn't even want to begin with, because TMZ reported, and I'll take that with a grain of salt, but they did say that she felt that Michael Caine was a gatekeeper in order to keep her dad in control. And this was in 2020, not long after the trademarks were reassigned. Yeah, it's a lot to put together, and it's been this is like months of research for me. And then on a combination of other people's research, that'll be months to years. So it's just a lot of information that there is to uncover. And you can probably just spend enough time researching on it and find something out that no one knows.
Sure. And well, it's all grassroots, bootstrapped. Everybody's funding their own corner of this and hoping that there's a place to meet in the middle at some point. Are you connected with Mystifying on Instagram? I think she's on Twitter
familiar.
Too. It's MX.
I might have.
MX underscore or dot DEF. Yeah, okay. So I just did an interview with her. I had her on a couple weeks ago. I haven't put the episode out yet, but I think that you two would. I want to invite you both onto an episode where I don't talk much and you two do the talking.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
Fantastic. I'm gonna reach out to her.
Yeah, for sure. I would, if she does want to do that, I would totally do it.
Great. Yeah, I think we're constellating or something. We're cluster fucking. We're messing up their game and we're enjoying it too. I'm really having a blast lately.
Me too. Like, the research is fun. I try not to make posts or anything about certain things I research, just because I've seen for myself that they will quickly cover it up. But yeah, it's just it's not just her, it's so many other things that with these documents and all of this other stuff out there, you can just research and find.
Yeah. Wow. Bless you, dude. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We have so much more to talk about, but I think we should wrap this one up. I may split it into 2 episodes for listener fatigue. I may just kick people down into the rabbit hole. That's the way. Wow. Oh, well, shit. Yeah, I'll definitely be seeing you on Discord probably in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And are you caught up to where we're supposed to be at in the book?
Not yet.
Okay. For context, well, we're reading How to Be Eaten in Alexa Nicholas's book club, which is by Maria Adelman, I think is her name.
Yeah, so I actually have read the book. I'm just actually not caught up to where you guys are at, because I actually did peek at one of the spoilers, and I'm like, ooh, I haven't gotten to that part yet. I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay. We're only on week 2.
Yeah, so I had just started week 2, but then you guys were talking about, I looked at the spoiler anyway, and you said something about synthetic skin, and I'm just like, oh, I haven't gotten to that part yet.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my gosh.
Oh man. Yeah, I wrote my spoiler to be intentionally cryptic so that people who did click it would not know still what I'm talking about, but I'm so glad to know that worked. Yeah, it's such a phenomenal book. I don't read, which I'm not actually. Now I have the audiobook, so somebody's reading it to me. But I don't read. I read complicated things. I don't really read stories or short things or whatever. But yeah, it's one of the coolest books I've ever heard stories. Like, I really am excited about the idea of it being made into another form of media somehow. I'm a little concerned that it's going to be somebody terrible getting a hold of it, but I kind of feel like it's already in pretty good, like, I don't know, like the community around it, the community that's excited about it is particularly, we just have like high quality, high standards for everything. The way the story is told, how it's packaged, we're very spoiled and like it that way, and gonna keep it that way.
That's anybody. Just because book movies, like when they make a book into a movie, it's just like it's a hit or miss. Like it's either they get it on point or they just really miss. Yeah, well, so it vibes a little bit like Kurt Vonnegut energy to me, and I feel like I've never really seen a good Kurt Vonnegut adaptation ever. Like, I don't know, it's like people get too in their feels about it when they're making whatever they make, so they don't convey the entire story because they're so wrapped up in that it makes sense already or something. Like, this is so profound, it doesn't even need to be, I don't have to do anything to have it be profound. The story speaks for itself, so I as a filmmaker can just kind of rest on my laurels, and I don't know. I'm kind of a judgy bitch a little bit. I totally get that, but yeah, they're like that with books and movies, especially books that are just really long or make them to a series. They just don't want to like make it that long or make it too long or whatever. So it's just they often miss the point at the wrong times.
And then we end up with J.K. Rowling getting the most thorough adaptations that surgically extract the most important parts for like creating a different world, but have all the parts you need to get people socially attached so they can never ever let it go. Anyway, that's another episode.
I'll definitely look forward to coming on here again, though. I'll have to check out the one that you did with Mystifying, because I didn't know that you had her on, so I'm going to check that out.
That's what's up. That one is in editing now, and I'm hoping to have it out in the next couple of weeks, which will be the past when this episode comes out and hits people's ears. We time travel a lot on this show. There's a lot of time travel.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's always fun.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. Where can people find you on the internet? Do you want to be found on the internet?
Yes. So I am on Medium under my Medium blog or whatever. I'm new to Medium, so I'm still getting used to it, but it is called Musicians Rights Network, along with my YouTube channel. And then everything else with my name attached to it is just my name, which is Jaden Young.
Jaden Young. Great. Fantastic. I am looking forward to burning down castles and flipping tables with you.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, excellent. Cool. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thanks so much again for having me.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Jaden for coming on and giving such a great talk. I want to say that I don't endorse Jaden's use of the phrase bullying behavior in the context he used it in. It's wild, though, how much my life turned into a chapter of that book club book. If you've made it this far, I'm assuming that you either love me and my show, came to sniff out the culprit for Jaden, are Christy Romano, or another hopefully responsible podcast that reported positively about Alexa and Eat Predators, hoping that she was the real deal. Or maybe you're just a full-blown hater with an attraction to cults. Or maybe you're possibly a haunted American Girl doll or her cuck-ass, suck-ass husband who actually does take care of their baby a lot more than she does, in my alleged opinion. For anyone who's looking into young Jaden, I mean Jaden Young's claims that someone took his voice away by reducing him to being young, I was also hurt by L.I.'s dismissal of the book club as a bunch of kids, and not exactly making fun of me, but definitely breaking my heart a little more than the book club did by kicking me out in her assessment of the group's age demographics and their abilities to think for themselves. I think Jaden was a great guest and has a lot of potential to take advantage of any opportunity he finds in front of him. So I hope that whoever took his voice and did all these terrible things, this Will, is exposed and put under a spotlight. He sounds like quite a character. Anyway, like, subscribe, and rate us. We're everywhere that podcasts are and on YouTube. Go to our Instagram and leave a message about how this episode made you feel. Or leave us a message at 415-343-4420. And go and like and comment on our YouTube stuff. It really helps us get more reach. Also, if you know anyone interested in knowing more about what the Eat Predators book club and Discord community were like, and who was there, please text or DM them a link to this episode so they can hear for themselves how Jaden's voice sounds when it's all his. If you feel like going on a kamikaze mission with your social media account, you can join our street crew and post your own clips and images of our promo content. Eat Predators allegedly blocks and deletes comments from anyone questioning any part of their narrative. You can call 415-343-4420 or email connect@goodmorningmayberry.com with the subject line Street Crew to get involved with that. Anyway, we've been here for a long time, so I'll just wrap it up and say, as always remember to never forget.
It's just a rumor. So it's like if someone goes on social media and says, oh, a source tells us that this, and this happened. It's just like, why is that always just assumed to be true by the masses? It's just so weird. And I think that's just the whole tabloid gossip culture that has been built into American society and has become such a moneymaker in a way that it's a very toxic thing for society. Really, you can, and I really am shocked to see that people at such a high success use these same tactics, but you can buy press articles on cheap blogs for pennies. People in business do it a lot, but it's just like, it shouldn't be so easy to have influence on, say, someone tells their story about abuse, and then it's just like, oh, I can throw money at this, and now everyone thinks that they're a liar. I just hope that when someone who can not necessarily understand everything that she's had to go through, but know just the familial abuse and how unique that situation can be, and how it can affect you. It's just like, there's a lot of us out there, and I didn't really realize that until I joined the book club, but in the Discord group, like, yeah, I didn't realize how similar a lot of other people's stories are to hers at times. So it's just like, I hope she sees that and she's not just seeing all the people with negative opinions. It's insane. It's the control over the narrative has a big thing to do with it. Just things that are disrespectful to say to anybody who's going through that, but knowing the details of his situation,
Right.
as he's spoken out about it, it's just a little extra kind of demoralizing to the person, because it's just, they have a lot of influence on the public narrative. So people who are enablers to the abuse or contributing to him being treated unfairly are really using this media as just kind of to back them up. And you'll even see when you follow cases, a lot of times those headlines get brought up in court. And you can write a story without necessarily having to diminish someone's character or write something that you probably already know is not the truth.
Sure.
And it's
Well, and
like
I would
they're
argue
always
and just in this particular case, it seems like it was a completely inflated concept entirely.
Good Morning Mayberry is brought to you by Amass Studio, LLC.